Welcome to the Leverage Your Influence podcast, where we talk to amazing people about how they are leveraging their influence through podcasting. Today, we're going to talk to a gentleman who got on LinkedIn in 2004. LinkedIn is truly one of the most underutilized platforms for podcasters. And today, we're going to talk about how you can leverage podcasting with your LinkedIn profile. Today, we welcome a LinkedIn expert, Mr. Daniel Alfon. Welcome to the podcast, sir.
Hello, GP. Thank you very much for having me on Leverage Your Influence.
Yes, sir. Honored to have you. And we want to dive right into our conversation. So the question is, for podcasters, why should they consider LinkedIn as a viable platform to expand their reach?
Excellent question. The first thing I would advise our audience to do is to run a Google search for their own name and to see how high their LinkedIn profile ranks. And for many of us, LinkedIn will be in the first page, and for most of us, it would be the very first result, organically, without us paying LinkedIn or paying Google to do this. And that means that you and I, Coach GP, we can change or pivot our LinkedIn profile to feature the podcast, to show what we could help our audience with, and it instantaneously will be saved and will be shown to anyone checking us out. Plus, if your podcast is related to business or entrepreneurs, this is the platform to be on.
Mm, mm. You often say, Daniel, that exposure is overrated on LinkedIn. What do you mean by that statement?
You said that relationship you make through podcasting is one of the best elements podcasting can bring. So I'd like to change that and to code that in terms of our LinkedIn influence. We can be very influential with 200 connections we know well, and we can be nobodies with 20,000 connections whom we don't know.
Mm,
The big question is who can introduce you to the person you'd like to speak with? So imagine you want to monetize your podcast, imagine you want to have a sponsor or something else. Then by visiting someone's profile, if you and that person share a mutual connection, you usually can see their names. For example, when I visit your own profile, I see that both Carl Richards and Roy Coffin are mutual connections.
yes.
So imagine if I look and say Carl who and Roy who, that doesn't help me. However, if I could reach out to Carl or to Roy and to ask, can you help me and make an introduction to Coach GP because I'd like to start my podcast. I'd like to use his help. And if they do that, then I'll receive your attention, not thanks to my name, which is meaningless, but thanks to that person's name, our mutual connection. You have to ask yourself, would you like to be the most connected or the best connected?
Ooh, that is powerful. Would you rather be the most connected or the best connected? The reality is, many of us, we add everybody on social media, and we are so proud of how many connections we have. But are you truly connecting with your social media community? And so you're raising the point of having quality over quantity. And just the fact of focusing on the few contacts that you have, you can build better connections with contacts who will be better for what you're trying to do. And so thank you for stressing that. So when it comes to our LinkedIn profiles, a lot of us don't pay much attention to it, and we just focus on who we're adding and how many connections we have, but we neglect the actual profile, what words, what we're putting in the descriptions, how we're describing ourselves. How can we leverage our impression on LinkedIn and treat it more like a website or landing page rather than a long resume with a profile?
Excellent. So I love it. What you said is practically have the answer because we want to decide what would like people to understand when they visit our profile. Back to question number one, who's our ideal reader? So imagine our ideal reader could be a business owner who contemplates starting their own podcast, but have a ton of questions and doubts. That should I invest in that gear? How do I find guests? And do I have to do only solo episodes, or do I have to commit to once every week? And all sorts of questions. So question number two, if you could make those people visit your own profile, what action would you like them to perform? And lastly, are you making it as easy for them to understand that this is the go-to place?
Mm,
So when I visit your own profile, you took the time to have a banner which shows both your name and the voice and vision you need. And I see the podcast coach even here before I even scroll. And within 2 seconds, I can go and book today a one-on-one video consultation with you. So don't make it overcomplicated. Who's your ideal reader? What action would you like them to perform? Now go do it.
I love it. I love it. Make it easy for people to find you and make it clear on your profile what exactly you are about and how you can help them. So, when it comes to podcast guesting, what are some do's and don'ts when it comes to keep in mind when it comes to being a guest on someone else's podcast and how to leverage their platform and their audience?
Be a good person, like our fathers and mothers taught us back in kindergarten or before that. So try to show up on time. Try to be respectful of the host and their audience. Check the podcast before you guest. I was listening to the episode you released with Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting, and it was interesting to see the questions you asked and sort of perspective that Dave added to the conversation. And that will not only help the host, it will also help us, the guests, because we have a better understanding of who we're talking with and what audience and how best to serve the that audience. Um, it's it's important to think of the episode as one element in a long-term relationship.
Wow.
In other words, we at one point will say thank you, but do we disappear or can we try and keep in touch with you?
Mm,
And that could be done by asking simple questions. Who would be a good guest for Leverage Your Influence? And if you, Coach GP, would like to be a guest on other people's podcasts, what sort of podcast would you like to be a guest on? Or come August 4th, will I take the time to message you outside of the LinkedIn platform
huh.
and wish you a happy birthday?
Yeah. That's a powerful point that you're making, that you can actually build connection points beyond the interview that are natural and not forced and not spammy, but it's just connecting with them. And all it takes is for someone to pay attention. Like you mentioned, August 4th, that's my birthday. That's like a no brainer opportunity to message me on LinkedIn or on social media. Now, let's get to this next point. A lot of folks on social media, they send a whole bunch of direct messages to people. They have no relationship. They're trying to get you to, you know, be exposed to what they do, what they have to offer. And it comes across very salesy and disingenuous. How can we come across more, I don't want to say human, but more genuine as we're seeking to build connections on LinkedIn? You mentioned asking for an introduction, but are there other things that we can do to connect with people in a more natural way?
Excellent. So I wish most people ask themselves this question. You ask Coach EP because most people don't. In other words, when we get the tool of the ability to spam 5,000 people, then we'll do it without asking ourselves, is this a good idea?
Huh.
Because maybe two people will click that bait and will go on some rabbit hole, but we have polluted the quality of our brand, and this is not good for business.
Mm,
So one way to look at it is simply to remember to leave the platform. In other words, if I'd like to have a meaningful conversation with you or a meaningful exchange, or even that introduction we just mentioned, I will not use LinkedIn.
Hmm.
On LinkedIn, on probably 24/7 or close to that. But the biggest secret is to remember when to leave the platform. Because imagine I wanted you to introduce you to someone, I wanted you to introduce me to someone, that will usually happen through email.
Right.
So it doesn't make sense for me to message you on LinkedIn. It makes more sense for me to send you an email, which is less intrusive. I can schedule that for your morning time, something that would be less intrusive. And it will be also a good idea for me to do it. So leave the platform when you want to do something meaningful. And lastly, check the the post that that person has shared,
Hmm.
because I could discover all sorts of things just by reading what you shared.
Right.
Not only the latest episode with Dave Jackson, but previous episode or previous post that the host or the guest have shared.
That is a great, great point. Know when to get off of the platform and to leverage other platforms. And so don't only send messages on LinkedIn, but send emails. That is so powerful, so simple, but yet so profound. I love that answer, Daniel. Now, let me ask
Thanks.
you this question. When it comes to podcasting and repurposing content and posting videos, or what's the best form? Is it video? Is it text? Is it audiograms? Which platform, which mediums of content resonate best with the platform?
Wow, that's an amazing question. I'll try to add a suffix. What resonates with you and your audience?
Hmm.
Let me try to explain that, because the platform can be tolerant to all sorts of media, but you have a real life personality. And from my perspective, Coach GP, we don't have to invent a personality just for the sake of LinkedIn. All we have to do is to act the way we would act in real life on this platform, because from my perspective, the platform is here to serve us
Hmm.
podcasters rather than we serving the platform. So I'll ask three simple questions. Say if you're not sure whether an audiogram or video would work. One, do you have a preference? Are you okay with both? Because if you like video, then go and share a video. The second question is your own connections. Does your own network prefer audiograms or video? You can check it out. You can see the analytics. You can even ask simple questions. Hey, I just had a conversation with that person. Would you rather me share the video or an audiogram or something else? Or you can create a poll. And lastly, the third question would be, are the ideal listeners or the ideal readers, do they have a preference?
Hmm.
And we want something that you like, that your audience goes and said, yes, this is Coach GP's style. This is the words he would use. This is aligned with the personality as we know him. Because imagine if we're introverts and we're doing all sorts of weird things on video, then people who know us look at it and say, hey, have you lost your mind?
Yeah.
What is happening here? You have a real life personality that helped you go and live to this day. You don't have to become someone else on LinkedIn. Use the same personality and the same perception that you have. It will be easier. You don't have to remember what to do. And if you love video, go and use video. Sort of content that works best on LinkedIn is top of funnel educational content.
Hmm.
I would even say that if you share top of funnel educational content, the medium is less important. In other words, going back to the person who's contemplating launching a podcast, you could think of at least three questions that those people ask themselves on a daily basis. If you cater to those questions
Yeah.
and you guide them to take the first baby step from point A to point B, It doesn't matter whether you used an audiogram or a video. However, if you used the right tool, but all you did was say, buy from me, it doesn't help us that you used the good medium because the message was not resonating with anyone. So try to focus on the message itself and then go with what you like in sort of it regarding to the content and the way to share it.
That is well said. Well said, Daniel. So, question: is it better to have a separate LinkedIn page for a podcast show or to keep it attached to your personal brand and just post content from there?
Excellent question. Short answer, don't try to open a new page. Now, why is that? Because on our individual profile, we have a lot more connections and followers than our page.
Mm.
You have 1,600 connections or followers. When I try to go to your page, you have less than 10.
Huh.
And that would go for most of our audience here. Because the natural action to perform on LinkedIn is to connect as individuals and not to follow pages. Most people follow very few pages. For example, your alumni, people who studied at the university you went to, then they would follow the Andrews University page
Right.
or the Oakwood University page or the Forest Lake Academy, okay? But they would not go and follow all sorts of pages because that's not something people usually do. So start with your own profile and highlight or feature your podcast there. Once you have a podcast like Joe Rogan, then consider it again. But for now, start with your own profile. That will do the trick.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Now, when it comes to attracting sponsors or collaborators for your podcast on LinkedIn, do you recommend people spamming companies, um, um, direct messaging them, hoping that the company will notice them and see that there's an alignment with their audience and product? Or should we focus on taking the relationship offline and connecting at a conference, or should we only rely on LinkedIn to build these connections?
I don't think we need to rely on LinkedIn. I think the conference could be a great idea because you would usually spend a lot of time to get introduced to people you could talk to during a conference. So let's say this. Running and identifying the right person to reach out to is something that's important, and you need to take the time to invest the time in order for you to know this is the person. I
Mm,
need Rachel from corporate marketing. I need John, the CEO. I need Jane, the VP, whatever. And then once you identify, LinkedIn or the company website will both tell you that. Then you try to leverage your network. In other words, do you have a mutual connection that is shared to you and that person?
mm,
It goes back to an earlier question we asked. Do we prefer to be the most connected or best connected? And if we have a mutual connection that can make the introduction, then by all means, leave the LinkedIn platform and say that I noticed that you would be on that in that conference in Philly next week. Would you have time for coffee? Or would you like to be a guest on my show? And then you sort of make it, you discover the idea of working together or cooperating once you have that conversation with that person, and that could lead into a meaningful conversation and also good business results for both of you.
yeah, yeah. I like to say that
Go
the
to the
most,
conference.
yeah, yeah. I like to say the most important uh, asset in podcasting is the relationships that you build. And so connecting as a human first can go a long way, instead of just trying to get something out of it, right? Just connect with the person and see if there's an alignment or a natural opportunity or window. So, Daniel, some of us are wondering, okay, I hear what you're saying. However, there are all these amazing AI tools and resources like
Mhm.
Apollo and Hunter, and they can scour my entire LinkedIn connection and give me their emails, and I can direct email them. They don't know me from anywhere, but I have 1,000 emails that AI has gotten from LinkedIn. Do you recommend us to go that route or to leverage both? And what's your preferred counsel for people trying to build connections? Maybe they want to build an email list or a sales list, but how can we leverage AI strategically and not foolishly?
Mhm. That's a very powerful question. And I would say this, only use automation if your name and the name of your podcast is not something you're proud of. You heard me right. Automation can save us a lot of time. But if we, Coach GP, don't want to be added to a meaningless newsletter without us opting in, then our audience doesn't like that idea. And we are shooting ourselves in the foot by trying to tell people go and do that, perform that action. Let's get back to the basics of content. You could repurpose the episode you released, and you could pick something interesting from that episode and share it in many, many ways on LinkedIn and on Instagram and wherever you'd like. Just taking that 30-minute conversation you had with, biblically speaking, Cassian Bellino, and you ask also, it's a very powerful question. So take a snippet or a nugget from this conversation and turn it into a question
Hmm.
or a post that would also make people discover the podcast for the first time.
Yeah.
And then they would come for the guest or the topic, but they would stay and leverage your influence, and then they would become loyal listeners, and then your podcast and yourself grow.
Wow. Valuable, valuable advice. So, Daniel, what is one of the biggest changes you've noticed? You've been on this platform before it was even popular, 2004. What are some of the changes that you've seen, both positive and negative, on LinkedIn?
Um, in one sentence, the pace of changes has tremendously increased, and LinkedIn back in the day would test all sorts of new features once every maybe 2 years. And now every day there's a new shiny object that LinkedIn tries to do to add. And the way people use LinkedIn has also changed. It's still the strongest business community in the world,
Hmm.
over 1 billion users. And since we started this chat, Coach GP, thousands of people have signed up. Every second, 3 people sign up.
Wow.
But 5 years ago, 10 years ago, sharing content that was not business related was the exception. And now the norm has become sort of, I slipped on a banana today, and here are my five takeaways for AI implications for our industry.
Yeah.
It's interesting to read. The challenge, of course, is when you meet that person virtually or in person, and you try to see that this is the person and not his or her avatar.
Right. Wow. So, in this age of super connectivity, you mentioned we lack connection and genuine engagement. What are some ways that we can be high tech and high touch on LinkedIn with our current audience?
I love this question. Easiest thing to do would be to nurture our existing relationships, which means that what we could do is go and check our network, and simply looking at their birthdays is something that is easily done. And if you know your network, then maybe you'll have a birthday a day, or maybe two people a day. And then what you do is leave the LinkedIn platform, go to your email, run a search for their name, go to a thread, you message that person, read and immerse yourself in what they're looking for, check things or stuff they shared on LinkedIn, and wish them a happy birthday outside of the LinkedIn platform and ask them a meaningful question. Like, who can I introduce you to today? Or
Mm.
anything that would resonate for that person. We speak thanks to Podmatch and Alexandre Filippo. But imagine Podmatch would not exist, then I could ask you, would you like to tell me what sort of guest you look for? And maybe I would come up with a name or two and I would be able to share those with you.
Yeah.
So please avoid the automation of sending a happy birthday through the LinkedIn system, because once people see, 85 examples of happy birthday, they're not eager to consider this as a highly authentic way of you reaching out.
Yeah.
But taking the long route to leaving the platform, writing something meaningful will take you 2 minutes. So before you accept the connection, ask yourself, is that person important enough for me to stop everything I do and dedicate a couple of minutes to read what they're looking for and to try to help them?
Mm.
And if you're not sure the answer is yes, maybe you two should not connect.
Hmm. Wow. Daniel, you have inspired our listening audience on how to better leverage LinkedIn. Some of us are perhaps wondering, well, Daniel, I only have a free profile. I don't have a business profile. I don't have a sales profile. I'm using this platform for free. And I think that I'm missing out on a lot of features because I'm not paying. Help that person understand the powerful tool that they can leverage right now.
Excellent. Can we make life simpler for the leverage your influence tribe?
Let's do it.
Cool. You don't have to pay for a premium account. The only time it makes sense for us to pay is when we use LinkedIn so much and so often that we hit the walls of the freemium account.
Mm.
But the free account, Coach EP, is so overwhelming and so rich and so complex that most of our audience probably never leverage more than 5 or 10% out of it.
Mm.
So instead of investing money in it, invest time. Say, okay, I want to try and figure this out. How much time can I dedicate to LinkedIn on a weekly basis? 10 minutes? Fine. An hour? Excellent. But by the time you've invested 4 hours in a month's time, you'll understand the platform way, way better. And maybe down the road, it would make sense to pay, but only because you'll know the difference between the free system and the paid system. Because if I granted you a premium account and you're not using the platform enough, you would not know what to do with it.
Mm.
So don't go that route. Invest your time in find time to see how LinkedIn works. And that's way, way more important than running and pay for a premium account. Sorry.
Mm. Thank you so much for sharing that and being transparent with the Leverage Your Influence audience. We truly appreciate it. And you're saving us money in the process. So tell us about your book and how we can connect with you beyond this moment. Because a lot of us are interested, we're inspired, we're intrigued, and we want to know how we can learn more from you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. All you have to do is check danielalfon.com and you'll find all sorts of resources, episodes that will help you either download virtual guides or book a one-on-one call. And my book is also featured there. And just mention that Coach GP is the one you discovered me, and I'll do my best to get back to you as soon as I can.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. If you had one last word of inspiration or encouragement to a million LinkedIn users in a room and you're standing on a stage and they say, Daniel, you have 1 minute, inspire them, what would you say?
I think it was Lincoln that said if I had 6 minutes, I would sharpen my axe for 5 minutes or something along those
Yeah.
lines. So I would say, forget about LinkedIn. What is your real life career objective?
Mm,
If you don't know the answer to that question, Coach GP, LinkedIn cannot help you in a meaningful way. However, the moment you say, I want X, I want to launch my podcast, I want to do this, I want to do that, then is the moment to look at LinkedIn and see that LinkedIn feeds your machine. If you have three strategy calls a week, and you could use LinkedIn to double that number, then you will be able to convert more calls into business. More people will work with you. But that only happens once you understood the system you have in place, and you should have a system in place. And LinkedIn is the only question to ask is what's the best way for me to use LinkedIn so my machine grows?
yeah.
Not my vanity metrics, but my business machine, my banking account, not the LinkedIn metrics, the real life metrics, the inquiries we have, the downloads we have, the revenues we have, not something else. Don't be blinded by the LinkedIn metrics. Focus on real life metrics, on orders, on inquiries, on demos.
Yeah. Powerful, powerful, Daniel. Thank you so much for sharing on the Leverage Your Influence podcast and for just pouring out the value on our listening audience. And we are excited about how you will continue to leverage LinkedIn and also help others as a LinkedIn coach to influence others and to get to what their goals are, as you just mentioned. So thank you so much, Daniel. And we hope that all of you listeners have benefited and that you're taking an action to go to danielalfon.com to get your freebies and also to connect with Daniel. Tell them that GP sent you. And we look forward to you growing in your LinkedIn journey. Thank you so much for listening. And we'll catch you on the next episode of Leverage Your Influence podcast, where we talk to amazing people about how they're leveraging podcasting to make a difference in the world. Take care.